The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. They said we couldn't do it, but we have. Season 7 has begun on the Sandy and Toddcast.
Season 7 is finally here. It's been a long road. We ended up just taking a couple of weeks off for the holidays, and we're almost done with January, but we made it. We did it. And
we made it. Yeah, we are. And the first 2 episodes of this season are going to be kind of ask any questions you want of us, and we'll answer them. So this could be interesting.
Yeah, I got thinking about it over the break, and I'm like, why don't we do a little Q&A? Some of the things, we've talked about are kind of hidden in previous episodes, but why don't we do a Q&A? And if anybody has any questions, well, then let's give them our thoughts and our opinions on things based on our experiences.
That's what it's all about. Season 7, Episode 1, Q&A with S&T. Next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
Hey gang, we are Damon,
Sue, and Amy Lynn
from the Adelaide Park Paranormal Society.
Join us for each episode of the Apps Alchemy Podcast as we take a deep dive into the world of the paranormal, cryptids, the occult, and more. We've seen, heard, and experienced almost everything, and now we're bringing it all to you.
Find us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and anywhere you might find your podcasts. Apps Alchemy Podcast is a Mindgarden Media production.
Broadcasting from 2 very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And it's all about Q&A this time around.
Q&A from S&T.
Brilliant. Who came up with that?
I don't know. You did. You have some good ones. I just like that my name is first in the name of the podcast.
I had a boss who, for a lot of reasons, drove me up a wall. For a lot of reasons. But he really taught me to try and make things click and be clever with it and take the knowledge that, about what you're doing, whether it was promotions or something like that, and name it something that was catchy. So he actually taught me very quickly to come up with kind of quirky stuff really quickly. And so I give him credit for the fact that, some of these names of these episodes are like really good.
Yeah. And what was one of the ones that we did with like ketchup, and that was so cute?
Wasn't it time to ketchup and mustard or something? I don't know.
Ketchup and fries or something.
Yeah.
Like really crazy, but it's fun. I would rather do that than just, you see a lot of podcasts and they're excellent podcasts, but then you just see the name of what the episode is and it's not kind of upbeat or catchy or anything. And that doesn't describe who we are, because I wouldn't necessarily say we're always upbeat, but we like to have fun and we like to be quirky and weird. So this works for me. So we got a good number. We got about 7 questions, but not just questions, big questions.
Todd. Oh, God.
Like, big questions. I had somebody message me a really cool question on my messenger. We got a bunch on our post in our group, Stay Weirdos, Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast. So what we're going to do is, these are some pretty involved questions. So this week we're going to take on 3 of them. And next week we're going to take on the rest.
Okay. And in between, I guess people could ask more questions if they wanted to, but.
Totally can ask more questions, and we'll just add them on, because this is going to be a lot of fun because, well, you guys all know how opinionated I am about things and how much I like to talk. So this should be really interesting.
So I'll just turn off my mic now and let you go. We'll get
I want your opinion.
We'll get through one question of Sandy's and that'll be it. That'll be the entire episode.
No. I want your opinion. All right. So we got lots of good questions. Let's kick it off with a question from Amanda Hefner. She says, why do you think that some people become ghosts while others don't? I've heard it's because they have unfinished business, but it seems almost everyone has that, and there doesn't seem to be as many ghosts as there are people with unfinished business, LOL. So I'm genuinely curious if it's a scientific thing. Like something happens as the brain and body are in the dying process, which results in a part of their being adhering to air particles. I love this question because it's a little science and it's a little bit of the metaphysical world and your belief system all rolled into one.
I'll start and then you can take up the rest of the hour on your answer. Okay. That way I get to say something on the podcast. Okay. So here's my thought process. I just, the term ghost to me has for a long time has not been a good term for me. I understand what's being said, and I'm not saying that's wrong terminology, but from my perspective, I think of everything as energy or spirit. And here's my belief. I don't have anything to back this up. This is my intuition. This is information that's come to me over the years of investigating and having things go, oh, that's interesting, or I didn't think about that. So with the knowledge that I've gained from investigating and just my intuition, I think when we leave our physical body on this earth, and I've said this like several times on the podcast, but I think our energy splatters. It basically goes out into everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I'm not just talking here on earth. I'm talking everywhere. We are there, baby.
Right.
And I think that, maybe people who had bad experiences or were tortured souls on earth, that energy may be stronger than somebody who lived a very happy life. And so it may be easier for that energy to be perceived by average people like you and I. Okay. Yeah. We might be able to pick up on that energy easier because it's so strong when it comes to that. But I truly believe that if you had an open mind, if you had the right energy yourself, you're going to see more than just tortured souls come forward. And, I said this, I'll just say one more thing on this. So I believe that, pretty much anybody who's passed on is available for some sort of communication with us if they want to, and if the energy's right between them and us and all that. I think we really could do that. And you kind of proved that with reaching out to your friend who passed away this past year. We did that with my mom at a location that made no sense, right?
Yes.
I mean, yes. So I will just say this, and I said this, I think, on a previous podcast, although maybe I didn't, but when you think about somebody's life, so my father just passed away. He suffered from dementia. The last, several weeks of his life, not great. There were periods of time when, early on in the dementia where things were pretty frantic for him. But prior to that, and even prior to my birth and knowing my father, the guy had a really good life.
Right.
Had a lot of fun, a lot of friends, a lot of laughter, right? That energy, the tortured part of the final days of his life is not necessarily how he's going to present it to anybody. He may present as the happy person that he was prior to all that bullshit. So I just think that we can communicate with just about anything. My mom, we communicated with her at the Cana Island Lighthouse. I don't believe my mom was she had her tortured soul stuff in life. I do believe that, but that's not what came through at our meeting. And certainly we weren't expecting to be able to contact her because there's no link with that location and my mother.
Right. And let's face it, Todd, that was phenomenal.
You said you just watched it again just recently.
I just recently watched the video again and noticed something I hadn't noticed before, because when we were at the wall, we were at a rock wall, and you had laid your K2 meter down on the rock wall, and I had laid my Mel meter down next to it. And believe me, I try everything. Like, I put pieces of equipment next to each other, on top of each other, to make sure there's no interference,
right?
Sort of as a base kind of understanding of what's going on. There was no interaction between these. And I just realized when watching the video again, because I was watching your K2 meter, so like focusing on that because it was going off the charts. I didn't realize that my Mel meter was hitting at the same time as the K2 meter.
Yes.
I mean, that's just phenomenal. And we were getting intelligent responses to our questions.
Do you remember when I asked her, like, I said something about you being kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And the K2 meter actually looked like she was laughing because the way it responded.
Up, down, really
Yes.
fast. It like flickered. And I just, it was phenomenal. And so to your point, here's what I think. I agree with you 150%.
By the way, I just saw, while we were recording, I just saw an orb fly into you.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
See? Okay, that's something that has never happened before.
Unless you've got unless you got a big bug in that room.
No,
I just saw an orb fly into you.
I don't have anything in that room. Now we got to watch the video.
Well, I'm not recording the video.
Drive me nuts. All right. So anyway,
nice.
How many times have we sat here and done this and you've never said that to me ever in my life?
Yeah.
And here, what are we talking about?
Yep.
Your mom and
spirit,
communication and spirit. One thing you'll notice that I never say is, rarely say is the word ghost.
Yeah.
First of all, my go-to is energy. Energy. That's my go-to. And I believe through my experiences in the past several years of investigating, going down this path that you and I have both been going down with discovering who we are in our journeys, one thing I've sort of realized is that when we pass, it is not the end, that there is more. And I truly believe that it is not a matter of the good or the bad. It's our consciousness. We become our consciousness when we pass. And so when you said that we kind of scatter, I do think we kind of scatter. There's a belief that when you are reincarnated, and this is very much held by a lot of people in the field, that about 1/3 of your energy, your consciousness, when you pass, stays kind of here. And the rest can move on to do the things. And we won't go into the long discussion of reincarnation. If anybody wants us to and what our beliefs are, more than welcome to ask that question because we can talk about that next week. But about 1/3 of our consciousness stays in this last life to sort of tie up loose ends, so to speak, or come and go, or visit places, or do whatever you have to do. I do not believe in bound spirits.
I don't either.
In the sense that I think it's all a conscious choice. Maybe not a choice the way we think of it here in the living world. Like I choose to go to McDonald's over Burger King, or I'm going to go to Wendy's over, Arby's. But I'll give you a couple examples. You mentioned my friend who passed away tragically and suddenly last April. When I found out a couple months later that he had passed, and it was, he didn't live near me, so we were only able to communicate via text and phone, and he would come up and visit once or twice here and there. Every year or two. His phone was destroyed in the car accident. And so his family had no way of contacting me. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't contact me. There was no way. And so I didn't know for 2 months. And I had a horrible time with it. And when I woke up one morning, and I swear to you, Todd, it was like somebody was speaking it to me. And they said, you are a medium, you are an empath, you are an investigator, you know what to do. And it was like somebody literally was speaking to me. And I don't know if it was him or not. But when I put down the recorder and the spirit box and I got the incredible responses that I got, I have tried a couple times since then and haven't really gotten anything. And I do believe that he consciously chose to wait for me to find out that he was gone. I 150% believe that he chose to wait for me to find out. That's how close we were. To tell me the things he told me before he moved on. Does that mean he's moved on forever? Like away from everybody? Not at all.
No.
But I think that it brought him peace. He wanted to bring me peace. And so that's what happened. So I don't believe that you are bound. Another example I'd like to give is the Herkimer County, the 1834 historic Herkimer County Jail. We did the investigation the weekend before he died, by the way, which was kind of ironic. We did a seance at the end of the night. The jail is incredibly active. We did the fundraiser in July, and I picked up on several different energies there, hit on all of them. And at the end of the night, we did a seance. And in this seance, a little girl came to me. And she actually interacted through touch and through the SLS camera. So the SLS camera, for anyone who doesn't know, if you've watched Ghost Adventures and shows like that, you've seen it. It's sort of the green stick figures where the camera can pick up bodies and movement. We had an SLS camera set up. And as we're doing the seance, and this little girl who was named Lucy was making herself known, the camera picked up Lucy, and it was a very small figure, and we knew. And as I spoke to Lucy, I realized how terrified she was. Lucy was a little 10-year-old girl, and I can still see her in my mind's eye like nothing. Blonde hair. She lived around probably the middle to late 1800s, probably closer to the late 1800s, terrified because Lucy, back in the 1800s, especially on the East Coast, the Northeast, there were a lot of orphans. And if anybody's heard of orphan trains, look it up if you haven't. It's a very interesting story. There's some documentaries on it. There were a lot of orphans because there was so much disease and illness. And if a mother died and a father was left with 3 or 4 children, they'd end up just becoming orphans. And either end up in an orphanage or on the streets. And Lucy was on the streets, and these little children would do whatever they could to survive. They would sleep on stoops or under benches, or they would sleep, or they would steal food to survive. And in the 1800s, children and women were put in jails for things like that. And there was a whole cell block in the Herkimer County Jail for women and children. Now, it's interesting because I didn't know this ahead of time. I go in very cold whenever I possibly can. I didn't know a lot of the history of the jail. I have always wanted to get in there, but didn't know a lot of it because there's a lot that isn't told. It's usually just the main quote unquote characters who have been in the jail whose stories get heard. So anyways, Lucy was caught stealing food and she was placed in the jail and she was terrified. And so this little girl, for some reason, I don't know what happened to Lucy. After her jail time or during her jail time, I don't know if she passed in the jail. I don't know if she passed and lived. I don't know if she got out and lived to be 86. I don't know. But for some reason, that terrifying point in her life drew her back to that jail. And she was there because of her fear. And so what I did is, and I normally don't do this without asking permission first, but I felt like this was a very urgent situation. What I did was I called on St. Michael to help cross her over. Now, by crossing over, I don't mean crossing over into heaven. A lot of people think of crossing over as you go through the tunnel and you go
to the
over,
gates. Yeah.
To the gates of heaven, the pearly gates, and, you go into heaven and your soul's at rest. That's not really, it's a beautiful belief system, and I was raised Catholic, so I understand it completely. But to me, crossing over actually means releasing you from the spot that you're in and giving you that free will to come and go as you please. Her terror at being there was holding her there. And as a child, as child energy, she didn't know how to get herself out of that. So what happened was St. Michael came and helped her and released her from her fears. And it's interesting because the EVP on the recording after that fact that we listened to afterwards, you could literally hear a door close, which I thought was really interesting, like a sliding door closing shut. But the point of that story is that I think that spirits are not ever really bound to a place. Physically, their energy isn't physically bound to the place. I think it's their emotional energy that may bring them to a place and then they don't know what to do with it. I had a case where we were in a restaurant and a young couple, they were 27 and 28, died tragically in a fire, the early 1900s when buildings were all wood. And he was working out there and she came the day before he was set to go home so she could surprise him and travel home with him. And the fire was that night and they died. They're still there. Do I believe they're bound there? I don't believe they're bound there. I think they go there because it's a remembrance for them. It's a sad remembrance, but I don't think they're stuck there. Side note, Dave and I went in September out to Rochester where they're actually buried and left some flowers for them and talked to them. But the point of my stories and my experiences is that it's formed this belief in me that these energies are not bound anywhere. Do I believe that sometimes they stay because they don't realize they're dead? Yes, but I don't think they're bound there. I think it's a matter of helping them understand that they are, and they can have the free will to move and leave the place. So I know that was long-winded, but there's a lot of things that go into this thought process of ghosts or spirits or energies and why there might be more people than ghosts. I don't think that everybody's consciousness is at a point where they need to be here or they have to revisit something or they're bound there in the sense that they're afraid of something. Tragedy, I think a lot of times does make them a little more hesitant to leave, but I don't think anybody's bound. And I don't believe in unfinished business. Let's put it
I don't
that
either.
way. I don't believe in that.
I want to reiterate just a little bit of spin on what you said. Mm-hmm. And that is, I truly believe in the energy thing. I don't think that pieces of us are bound someplace, but we do leave pieces of us behind because of that energy. And I'm going to equate it to some other energy. So the sun, we know, is energy. It gives heat, mm-hmm. It gives light, all that kind of stuff. It leaves behind its energy every time a flower grows or, You know what I'm saying?
Yep,
so
I know.
It heats the earth. It leaves behind that energy. Same thing with us. Tragedy. Fire takes a house and burns it down. You see the results of that negative energy. It's there and it will always somehow be there. Even if you tear it down and rebuild, the fact that there was a fire there and the house was burned. So I don't believe we or our spirits are necessarily bound to that, but that instance or that particular situation is imprinted on everything that happened there. So, and I say this all the time, you have a hardwood floor in a location and somebody walks on it throughout many years, hundreds of years, there's going to be a little wear in that floor because the energy they use to walk across that floor and the rubbing on the wood and all that kind of stuff is left behind. A river runs through rock. It leaves behind energy. It changes things. So we can divert that water to another location. We can move the water, but it's already done. So again, I don't think we're bound. And when I think of somebody passing over, I think about that energy being allowed to release if it's kind of stuck there. So I just wanted to throw that in. Okay.
Agree. I'm really surprised that nobody asked about residual versus intelligent energies. Because it's sort of along the same kind of lines. Mm-hmm. People think that residual energy is not like quote unquote real or But I've been in plenty of places where there's not much intelligence going on, but there's an awful lot of residual. We leave imprints of ourselves everywhere we go. Everything that happened to us leaves some sort of energy imprint.
Whether it's the way you treat other people and you leave that energy with them for the rest of their lives, whether it's good or bad. I mean, same thing. And we talk about intelligent energy and stuff like that. We don't know enough about that to know that it's from the past or it's on a separate timeline right now. And there's so many questions. We could go down the rabbit hole, but we won't. Yeah. But it's so fascinating. It was such a great question because it just kind of leads to more questions about things. But there's so much. I mean, you can have an intelligent energy, but also the same energy be residual at the same time. You can have both. One person who's passed can be both intelligent and residual at the very same time. I've experienced that numerous times too. Things like that just absolutely fascinate me. So, Amanda, thank you for that question. I know it was long-winded, but it's just sort of like our experiences and the things that we've noticed over the years. If just real quick, your mom coming to us, she chose to come to us. Why she chose to come to you and I together, who knows? Maybe and I knew she was going to be there, right?
I know.
Beforehand.
Exactly. So, she chose to come to us. She may never choose to come to us again.
How dare you, Mom?
That's right. But she may not feel like she needs to.
Right.
That vacation in June for us was a real, we've now known each other 3 years and we've spent time together. I know. But that vacation was bonding for us. That was a really bonding vacation for us. And maybe she chose that particular time because she wanted to be a part of that. She felt that bond. I don't know, but it's just so interesting. So anyways, all right, let's go on to, Kyle's got a good one. Kyle Hayes, who I love. What are your thoughts on what the afterlife is or isn't? So many of us grew up with a very defined version of the afterlife painted for us, but the human experience can be so bizarre and complex that it doesn't seem like one prescribed version makes sense. Are myths and belief systems of all kinds parts of a larger, stranger puzzle that represents experiences of life after our physical body's death? Basically, WTF is going on, which I appreciated that last question more than the whole thing. I'll kick this one off real quick because I think in general, the whole thing about experiences and beliefs, Dave and I have actually, believe it or not, Dave and I have actually had this conversation more than once because Dave was raised Jewish and his family wasn't the most Jewish family in the world. They observed certain things. They had traditions, but it wasn't like... They
eat Chinese food on holidays.
Yeah,
that's how Jewish
basically. I tell him he's the worst Jew I've ever met in my life because I know more words in Hebrew than he did. He did make his bar mitzvah and everything. But we've talked about belief systems, and I was raised Catholic. And you're taught in the Catholic religion a very certain way of believing everything. We were taught about heaven and hell and purgatory and, all of this stuff that goes into the Catholic religion. And as I grew up, right around the age of 16, I sort of started to realize that, maybe there's more out there than just what the Catholic religion speaks about. Now, I'm not knocking the Catholic religion. The point is that over the years, my belief system has evolved, and I don't necessarily relate to one religion at this point in my life. I've sort of formed my own belief system and my own spiritual views of things. And I think that everybody needs something to believe in. Everybody needs something to believe in, whether it's heaven and hell or purgatory or not purgatory or whatever a certain thought process brings you to. Everybody needs faith in something. Faith in anything makes us a better person and gives us something to hope for and something to believe in.
As long as your faith doesn't stop you from allowing others to have their own faith ideas.
Boom. Boom. Exactly. Mic drop. Exactly. We all have the right to believe what we want to believe. So that's an incredibly difficult answer for me to give for something specific. But I will say that my belief system over the past few years, the more I dig into things, has evolved more so than the rest of my life. And our birthdays are coming up in February. We were just talking about that. I'll be 52. You're going to be 53. You're older than me. And I had to throw that in there.
And better in so many ways.
Whatever. But my belief system has changed. I'm starting to think that, the closer you get to old age, the more you start to think about it. And I've sort of realized that I definitely don't believe that that's the end when you die. I definitely don't believe that. I'm starting to lean more. It's no secret that I believe that, and you and I have been told this, that we have reincarnated together. We're part of the same soul group. And there's a reason why we were so drawn to each other, like right off the bat. And we had so many parallels in our lives. And I've been told twice now that we've reincarnated 28 times together. But I do believe that I have lived before. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And if anybody wants to know that, throw the question in and we'll talk about that. But the moral of my story is that I do believe that there is more. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know that we just float around. I don't know how we reincarnate or what the process is, or the Akashic, how do you say that? Akashic records? Akashic records is sort of like this place where you can literally go and learn about your other lives. And if you do past life transgression, is that the word?
Regression.
Then you can find out more about it. And I've actually toyed with the idea of trying to do something like that. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I don't know. I think our purpose in each life is to learn as much as we can and to help as much as we can. Like we've said before, Todd, why do we investigate? We don't investigate just for thrills. And many people do, and that's okay. But we investigate because we want to learn as much as we can and we want to help as much as we can. And I think that by evolving into someone who realizes that kindness and love are the best things, I think that that's part of our purpose, is to evolve, and to bring that to other people. So it's hard to give an exact answer because nobody's going to know for sure. But bottom line, I do believe that we all should have faith in something. We all should believe in something. And we shouldn't look at someone differently because they don't believe what we believe.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I will just add very briefly that as humans, there's only so much that we can try to understand before our minds are blown. I mean, when we have confirmation of the first UFOs and aliens, which, is not far from actually happening,
right?
Our minds will be blown. And maybe that'll be the first shot for some people to go, okay, we don't know everything.
Right.
I think most organized religions use stories and simple ways to explain stuff so that our simple minds can wrap around them. So I think a lot of religions say heaven and hell. And really maybe what it's saying is the hell part may be tough situations that you need to go through in life in order to learn something. And the heaven may be all the wonderful things that a lot of us just pass by every day and never give thanks for. Right. So I look at it that way. My belief is when we leave these bodies, well, first of all, I don't even know that right now. My only existence is this, what I'm doing right now with you. I could be, my energy could also be doing something else. And I just don't, there's no connection there yet.
God help the world that has two Todds. I'm just saying.
Listen, it would be a great fucking world. I'll tell you that right now. Because this son of a bitch right here knows what's going on. No, but I think, we just don't know. And I think when we leave this body, we continue on. Probably, maybe not in another human body form. Maybe it's something totally else. Who knows?
There's even an idea that aliens can reincarnate as humans and vice versa. Of course,
yeah. We don't know. We talked about Bigfoot in the last thing. We nobody's ever caught one for sure, but there's certainly evidence out there that something's going on.
Look. No, but we have no control over it. We're all going to die. So why not just have fun and try and, and just think about all the possibilities and learn about things. I mean, organized religion, let's face it, where did organized religion come from? Like a couple of people who just really just decided to think things up. I mean, we don't know. They didn't know for sure either. Nobody knows for sure how life formed or what. I mean, there's scientific proof that life formed a certain way. So, and
we also know that sometimes science isn't right because down the road they figure something else out. So
exactly.
Listen, Kyle, there's no answer to this goddamn question.
You know what? My advice to everybody is just believe what you want to believe, what's most comfortable for you. Because we have no control over it anyways. The only thing we have control over is what we do today.
Right. And
now,
make sure it's
in
filled
this moment.
Make sure it's filled with kindness as much as you can. Right. And if you're in an evil mood, stay away from other humans. That's all.
That's right.
All right, let's move on to the next question.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not that tough.
Let's do our last question for today. And this is a good one. We kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. Stephanie G says, why do certain people experience unexplained spirit type events while others don't, but want to? Does one have to be open to it, just hope it will happen, or do these types of events just seem to occur randomly?
I'll go.
Take that?
Yeah, I'll go quick on this one.
Me too.
I think some people experience it because they are more open to it and they haven't closed off as much or have learned to open up as well.
Yep.
Early on in my investigating, I investigated for years and never had anything happen. I was to the point where it was like, well, this is bullshit. Everything I'm seeing on TV and the ghost hunters and all that stuff, it's got to be fake because I'm not getting anything. Nothing's on my recorder. Nothing's on my video. Nothing. And then I join energy with a group of people and all of a sudden all shit happens. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've opened up more. I'm having more experiences. Having investigated with you was a whole new level of investigating for me.
Yep.
And so I think that's the big thing. Your energy may be closed off to it. Your energy may not align properly. And it may take some learning. It may take some experimentation on your behalf. It may take finding or meeting somebody whose energy allows you to open up and do those kinds of things. It's not out of the question for it to happen. Don't be discouraged because you're not the only person who would want to see something happen that hasn't. There are people on TV, and I think of Chris Williams from the original form of Ghost Hunters.
Yeah.
Like she investigated a long time. And who's the guy on that show? He's got it's not Steve, it's
Tango. Yeah.
Tango was with them a long time before he really had something happen to him. And then once that happened, then things opened up. And I also noticed, just really briefly, I always noticed on that show that people like Steve and Tango for a long time rarely got anything. And the minute they started investigating with Jay and Grant, things started happening because I think way back in the day, Jay and Grant, their energies were so good together that anything that could happen was going to happen. So again, it has a lot to do with energy. Don't get discouraged. Do as much opening up as you can, and maybe try and find somebody whose energy matches yours, and all of a sudden something magical happens.
It's interesting. The first time I ever intentionally tried to get activity, very first time I intentionally tried to get activity, it was insane. It was at the Cashtown Inn just outside of Gettysburg when I got the EVPs, the infamous EVPs. That was in 2008. That was the first time I ever intended to do something. We were staying at the Cashtown Inn in the General Lee suite, and I just brought a recorder. That's all I had back then. And I brought a recorder and I put it on the dresser as we were getting ready to go to bed the first night, and got these amazing EVPs. And we can talk about those someday too. And I can actually play them. I think we may have played them before. I'm not sure. But the point being that if you open yourself, I do believe that we all have the ability to some extent. I don't think everybody has the same level of ability, but I do believe that we all have the ability to some extent to have experiences. It is, like you said, Todd, it's a matter of opening yourself up, letting your guard down a little bit, because from the time that we're children, you always hear a lot about babies experiencing things and children experiencing things. But when you reach a certain age level, that stuff tends to go away because we're taught that these things can't be real. So open yourself up a little bit to it. Go in and set your intention. I'm all about setting intention. Set your intention that you want to communicate with whoever wants to communicate with you. Now, that doesn't mean don't protect yourself. There's a difference. You should always protect yourself. I always have protection with me, whether it's a crystal, whatever it is. You should always have some sort of protection. You don't want to open yourself up to something that could be not very nice, and it will happen. But everybody has the ability. Now, I found myself that as I've evolved through this, and once I accepted the fact that I do have maybe a little higher level of abilities than some people have, once I opened myself up to it, it was like, boom, 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 boom. What am I saying? I just said to you last week, Todd, I said, last year I felt like I leveled up. This year I feel like I've leveled up. And you can feel it. Because this year I had that crazy, strange dream. And I think that was when it started for me this go round. And I feel like my abilities are just evolving. Like I'm seeing more than I did before. I'm experiencing more than I did before. I'm feeling more than I did before. But it's only because I'm allowing myself to do it. I'm opening myself up to it and accepting it for what it is. So regardless of whether you think you have abilities or not, I think everybody does to a certain extent. At the very least, if you open yourself up to the opportunity for someone to communicate with you, if they want to, they will. And I say that if they want to, because that's very important to remember. When you are, like Dave and I go to Oakwood Cemetery all the time, and I open myself up to them and I say, if you want to communicate with me, I am here to communicate with you. And I will tell you that every single time something happens, because I am allowing them to talk to me. I'm not forcing them to talk to me. And there's a difference. So just remember that if you're trying something, remember that you have to open yourself up and ask them to come to you. Don't try to force them to come to you, because it's all about free will in the energy world.
So my very first time that something happened, and I remembered it, and I've told the story before, but nothing ever happened to me for a couple of years. And then one day I had my woo-woo friend Sherry over, who
I love that.
has a lot of abilities. And we used the K2 for the first time. And in my house, it started happening. And that experience wrapped up, a communication with the K2 wrapped up with us ending the investigation, basically, if you want to call it that, and having a conversation about work. And then we heard footsteps upstairs walking down the hall and a door close.
That's so cool.
So that was my first experience. And since then, it's just been, poof. Now, I don't have the experiences you have as far as, because I don't have the abilities you have, nor would I want them. But, certainly if I investigate, I get stuff.
Yeah.
So, just give yourself
and you have a lot more than you think you do, but you have a natural tendency to kind of put the walls up.
Absolutely.
So, right. And but the lesson with you, though, is that you allow what you are comfortable with. And that's so important. That's so important. Allowing what you're comfortable with. I sort of realize that I'm on this path, and there's a reason why I'm on this path.
Because she's crazy as hell. She's nuts.
So that's the thing. When you allow yourself to communicate and you don't live in a totally skeptic world, that doesn't mean that you can't be a skeptic on some level, because we both are. But when you allow yourself to experience it, it will come to you. It's just a matter of allowing them to choose that path with you. And it can happen. And a lot of times you have to be really aware, because it could be just something very small. And if you're not careful, you won't realize what's going on. So that's another great question. So those are the first 3 questions of our Q&A. And again, if anybody would like to add any questions on, more than welcome to. We'd love to go over these. Maybe we could do a few more episodes. I mean, we have some more to go through next week, but maybe we could do a few more episodes.
Sure.
Because these are kind of neat.
Yep.
They're kind of fun to talk about. And a lot of them are geared towards things that I've truly been thinking about the last 6 months or so, ever since the experience with losing my friend, sort of made me think about this stuff even more than before. Because it's the first brush that I've had with death, the first experience since my grandfather 22 years ago. So,
Well, all right. We're going to take a moment here to get you caught up on our spiel, and then we'll be right back.
You can find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts, including YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. You can also join our group, Stay Weirdos Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for more fun. Stay Weirdos is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and random inappropriate memes without judgment. Sandy and Todd also have a podcast called the Empathecary Podcast. It's for empaths, by empaths. And if you know an empath, you might want to listen too. Find and like the page on Facebook. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can also help with that too. Mindgarden Media is their latest project, where the dynamic duo can guide you every step of the way in your podcasting journey. Editing, producing, and consulting is what they do. Like Mindgarden Media on Facebook, or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for staying weird.
Season 7, Episode 1, Q&A with S&T, Part 1 is done.
That's right. Done. Kaput. Kapooey.
I'd love to hear more questions, although none so deep as Kyle's. Just
I know. Kyle, we should have saved Kyle's for the very, very, very end, because that was just a lot. But there are some really fun ones too coming up.
Well,
too.
And it's a great question. I'm just giving help.
It's a wonderful question. It's something that I've thought about myself all the time. Dave and I, even when Dave's discussing this, then you know that there's something going on here. It's a big question. So yeah, I love the questions, and more next week. All right. One from my cousin too, which I thought was very cool. My cousin Marilyn. Interesting. Does she have any good stories about you, about your craziness as a child? We didn't know each other. Oh. We have never met in person. And she doesn't live that far, so I think I'm going to try and set up a meeting sometime this
You really should.
her.
That would be great.
I know.
That would be an episode in itself.
I met her real quick. Well, okay. So a few years ago when I was in radio, when I was doing the morning show, I came up with an idea for Community Service Person of the Year. And I did it a couple of years in a row. And the winner one year was nominated by her mother. And she actually ended up winning. And come to find out, so about a year after that, I did a DNA test. And her mother was my DNA match. So I reached out to her of one of my matches, and I reached out to her, and come to find out, we're second cousins. She was my grandmother's niece. And how ironic is that we didn't even know that until a year after her daughter won the award. And so we've been friends on Facebook. And then her sister, who is named after my grandmother, Marilyn, actually, we became friends on Facebook too. And I adore both of them. They're such wonderful people. And I think it took 50 years to to be able to have these wonderful women in my life, and it's just so cool. So she is very much a believer and very much an understander of my journey, and it's pretty darn cool. We've exchanged some stories and some thoughts ourselves. So Marilyn's question next week.
All right, sounds good. Till we see you next time. Bye.
Bye.